Hold on. Okay.
There we go. We're good.
Awesome. Let me just get chat up so that I can, if you have anything, any comments to make, this is definitely a pretty casual workshop. And it's a lot of just various things. So if you've used Vim before, you're more experienced and you have like something interesting to say, like, oh, here's a command you didn't talk about or you didn't know about. Definitely bring that up in the chat. I'm always looking for ways to expand my Vim knowledge. I'm sure other people in the audience are interested too. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So what is Vim? Why would you actually want to use Vim? Well, Vim is just a text editor. So it's like your Notepad on Windows, or Visual Studio Code is definitely a very common editor these days. It stands for VI Improved because it's an improved version of the VI editor. So VI sort of pioneered the sort of modal editing that Vim uses. And Vim was just a reimplementation of VI, but to be improved. So VI Improved, Vim, that's where the name comes from. All right, so why do you actually why are you coming to this workshop? Why would you want to learn Vim? Well, as some people in our poll have pointed out, you might get trapped in it someday. It's always good to know how to exit. So that's the first thing we're going to kind of cover. And it's available by default on Mac, and most Linux distros will ship with some version of it. It's incredibly lightweight. And when I say it'll run on your toaster, if you have a powerful enough toaster, it might, because like the whole runtime, I think, is at a couple megabytes at most. I've never seen a build that was over like 10 megabytes. So compared to something like Visual Studio Code, or especially something like in a heavy IDE like Eclipse, it's substantially smaller and faster. And it has extremely powerful key bindings that are available in a variety of different editors. So even if you don't want to use Vim, it's kind of like your daily driver editor. You want to stick with VS Code or some IDE, that's totally fine. Most of them include a Vim plugin just because the Vim mindset it's such a powerful way to edit text. Okay, Chris in the chat says, what do you mean by modal editing? We'll get to that. That is kind of like the big innovation of Vim that makes it different than a lot of other editors. Here's just some places you'll likely see Vim show up, or places that's useful, or the key bindings come up. So if you run git commit and you forget to do the little -m option, it will open up your default editor to make the commit message. And on like default installs of like git bash, for example, this is usually Vim. So if you haven't changed something else, it's usually Vim. On many Linux distributions, Vim is the default editor for all kinds of various things. So it's good to know for those reasons. Especially like where it comes up a lot is if you're like SSHing to a server somewhere, and you can't always like install VS Code like remotely and like use it. You only have a terminal interface. So Vim is a great editor, a really powerful editor you can use like over an SSH connection. Even if there's latency, the performance is very good. Like I said before, most editors have a Vim mode or plugin you can get. They're varying quality, but some of them are very good. And then also just some of the key bindings. I like to think there's like other Vimmers out there who like add these key bindings to various sites, because sites like YouTube, Gmail, DuckDuckGo, GitHub, I've noticed have like J and K bindings or / to search and things that come from Vim. So there's also that. Okay, so this is a great meme. This is what people think about exiting Vim. They actually get trapped. There's a great Stack Overflow question. It's one of the most popular Stack Overflow questions of all time, just how to exit Vim. Over 1 million people have actually looked this up, which is hilarious because it is extremely unintuitive. But once you know it, it's relatively simple, and there's actually an easy mnemonic you can use to remember it. So it's basically 3 steps. First, okay, don't panic, right? You don't need to like X out the window forcibly. That can cause like file corruption and things. It's not a good thing to do unless you absolutely have no other way to do it. If you hit escape, that will usually remove you from whatever mode you're currently in. So Vim has different modes. Escape will usually remove you if you've typed anything by mistake, but it's not necessarily required. If you've typed literally nothing else, you don't need to do step 2 either. All you really need to do is step 3, where you type :Q, and that stands for quit, and that will quit the program. And if you do :Q with the exclamation point, that is quit without saving. So the exclamation point you can kind of remember as like, okay, Like I really like, it's like adding emphasis. Like, do you want to quit? Are you sure? Like, yes, I definitely want to quit. So that's kind of how you can remember those two. And that's how you exit Vim. That's it. So if you're ever stuck in it, you type git commit by mistake and you're like, oh no, how do I get out? :Q is your friend. And then also, if that is something that happens to you, of course I love Vim, so I'm fine sticking with it, but consider reconfiguring your editor, default editor, so that it can open up in VS Code or whatever you're used to, so you don't get stuck in Vim again. But that is how you exit. There you go. Workshop over, right? So actually at this point, we're going to step into like how you would actually use Vim. So say maybe you do want to write your commit messages in Vim. I know lots of people who will write commit messages in Vim or do small links things in Vim, even if Vim isn't the main editor they use. It's just a cool sort of utility thing to know. So we're getting back to that question Chris had. What is a modal editor? A modal editor just has different modes. So if you want to actually edit things in Vim, here's how you can do it in 4 steps. So you press the character I to enter insert mode. So unlike a normal editor, when you press a character, Vim doesn't necessarily type that character. It will only type that character if you're in insert mode. So to get into insert mode, you have to type I. And so you type I, no eyes will appear on the screen. You'll just silently be put into insert mode. Some distributions will have like a little indicator if you have like a modern version, which is nice to show you, but nothing's going to get typed. Then you can make edits kind of like normal. So you can type whatever you want, backspace, type all the characters. Escape will remove you from insert mode back to what's called normal mode. And then you can use :WQ. So there's that :Q sort of coming back again. Well, the W stands for write. So write is just like save. And then Q will quit the program. So if you type :WQ, you get write quit or save and exit. That's sort of an extension of just the quit. There's some other ways to exit too, but that's the one that I use. So yeah, if you just want to like use Vim for editing, get commit messages, this is all you really need to know. Type I, make the edits you want to make, press escape, and then :WQ to save and quit the file. If you want to actually get more in depth for Vim though, and kind of actually use it or try to use some of the more powerful key bindings, you're going to want to know some things other than just what we showed. And that's sort of what the rest of this workshop covers. So first thing, if you want to get Vim and kind of follow along and test things out, you can grab it at one of these different places. So Mac should already have it installed. You just type Vim in a terminal. Vim is a command line editor. So there is a graphical version called gvim. You can use that, but you can also just run it straight in a terminal, which is really convenient for some things. If you have git bash, it's bundled. So if you open up the git bash terminal in Windows and just type Vim, again, it's only like 5 megabytes or whatever. So it might as well be part of git bash. And then if you have Linux, you probably have it built in, but sometimes you get a very minimal version of Vim built in. So you might want to install like a fancier version with more features compiled in, bringing up the total size to maybe 10 megabytes. And so you can do that and grab that for your favorite Linux distribution. And of course, there's editor extensions as well. Just search for Vim in whatever your extension marketplace is. Something else I'll recommend you to set up is remap your caps lock key to escape. So this keyboard right here is actually the keyboard that the original designer of VI had. And so you can kind of see where the inspiration for some of the bindings comes from. As we'll learn here in a minute, H, J, K, and L are the arrow keys in Vim. So that's how you can move in different directions. And it's because his keyboard just didn't have any arrow keys. So he used those as his arrow keys. That's what he programmed into Vim. And then also escape is used to switch modes a lot. On modern keyboards, escape is pretty hard to press. It's like in the top left, which is not really a convenient position. But you can see that on his keyboard, he kind of had escape accessible where tab currently is. But tab is useful. So generally people will map caps lock, like I switch my caps lock and escape keys. So escape does caps lock and caps lock will do escape. If you really love shouting on the internet, then I'm sorry, this might not be a good solution for you. There's some other ways you can remap things, but that's the most common. Okay, so to understand Vim, you really need to grasp, you need to grok Vim. And there's 2 main things you need to grok about Vim. First, it's a modal editor. We've already kind of talked about that. We're going to touch on it again. And it's also a language. So we'll get into that in a minute as well, sort of what that means. But if you understand those two things fully, then getting into the Vim mindset and being able to use it properly shouldn't be too difficult for you. If you just type I for insert and then type what you want and then exit and save, you are using Vim in a sense, but you're not really grokking or using it to its full potential. So these are the two things you kind of have to know to do that. Okay, so Modal, we already went over this. Basically, typing a key doesn't always do the same thing like you would in a normal editor. So let's kind of go back to our 4 steps and see how this works. So you start and spend most of your time in normal mode. It's called normal mode because it's like the norm. That's where you probably should be most of the time. When you want to make an insertion or an edit, you type I. And so you can see by typing I, we're going to switch from normal to insert. And then we're making lots of edits. That's great. We're in insert mode. When you press escape from insert mode, that takes you back to normal mode. And then while you're in normal mode, you can type this colon, takes you into what's called command mode. And command mode, we'll see sort of this appears as like a little command line at the bottom of the screen where the command shows up. And that's yet another mode where you can type things like WQ. And that doesn't edit the text in the program. That doesn't navigate you around or anything like you would in normal mode. That lets you do something else. So there's the command mode, and then we exit. So those are like 3 of the main modes. There's some others as well we'll touch on. So those are kind of the main 3. So normal is like navigating around. There's also lots of other helpful commands we're going to go over. Insert mode is basically like your normal editor, so you can just type things in and get words coming out. Command mode has all kinds of utility commands like find insert or find and replace, regular expressions, converting tabs to spaces, and all kinds of various useful things. There's no way I can go over all those. Probably won't have a lot of time to cover those today. And then visual mode is cool. It's like a way to select text. Kind of like if you hold down the left mouse key and then like go over some text, that's sort of what visual mode lets you do. Okay, so that's the idea of Vim being a modal editor. Not many other editors are modal, so that might kind of be strange as you get used to it. But once you get over that hump, the thing you need to understand is Vim is a language. And what's really powerful about this is you can use commands that you've never, just like you can say a sentence that you've never said before, right? You don't have to memorize every possible sentence to be able to say it. You can compose your sentence out of known nouns and verbs, and you're able to do that, right? Just because you know what each individual noun, verb, adjective, adverb, pronoun means. And Vim is the same way. Once you learn kind of the basic nouns, verbs, and adjectives that are offered, you can do text transformations that you've never done before very efficiently. And it feels very intuitive once you get used to it. So first, let's cover our nouns. They're called motions because if you just use a noun without any other modifiers to it, it will just cause you to move. So you have H, J, K, and L. Those are your arrow keys. So if you're in normal mode and we press H, that'll take us left, J is down, K is up, L is right. This is one of the hardest things to get used to when you're starting. You can use the arrow keys, but again, moving your hand off the whole idea of Vim is you never have to move your hands off the keyboard. You don't have to use the mouse. You don't have to use the arrow keys. And so you can just stay on the home row and basically just type like you normally would, which is much faster than going over and picking up the mouse or whatnot. And so that's why I use H, J, K, and L over the arrow keys. If you find yourself going back to the arrow keys a lot, when I first started, I remapped. You can in Vim remap all of the arrow keys to no operation, so that when you press it, just nothing happens, and you have to use it H, J, K, L. And after a week or so, you get used to it. Okay, you have W, E, and B are different sort of like word motions, and there's also a capital variant that does something slightly different. The way this is like in the docs is kind of confusing, but basically lowercase word is a word like you would consider like a series of letters. So let's actually open up Vim. Can you see the exit of my presentation? Let's see if this works. I want to move this over. One moment. Let me move over my. No, how do I get out of this? Oh, Zoom getting in the way. There we go. All right. Someone in the chat confirm. Can you see this? I think the easiest way to demonstrate a lot of these things, or to understand a lot of these things, is just to see them. Okay, so let's open up a terminal. Let me blow this up a little as well so you can see it better. Also, can you see the little bar that shows what I'm typing? That way it makes it, you can kind of see. Okay, awesome. Yeah, because I'm not going to read what I type. That's too complicated. Okay, awesome. So you can just open Vim with Vim. I have basically, this is just a kind of a stock install of Vim 8. That's the latest version. I don't have any plugins. The only thing I have is a color scheme. I have a solarized color scheme because I love solarized. Other than that, yeah, that's all I have installed here. Okay, so if you notice, we start in normal mode. You don't see anything. If you hit I, you see now we're down here in insert mode. So that's when we're in insert mode, we can just type whatever. Let's see. All right, you can just type whatever, and that's great. And then notice I hit escape to kind of exit out of insert mode. So you can go in and out of insert mode. That's that. So if you want to move around like left and right, you can use H and L. And if we have multiple lines, so let's type some more lines. So here, let's just get this a few more times. Okay, so Vim's pretty great. So we want to move up and down. We can do J and K. You can see that that moves up and down. The difference between, so let's talk about these other ones. So W is word. This is actually, I rarely actually use left and right navigate. Mostly, to move much faster, you can use words. So W will move you a whole word. And B will move you back a word, which is pretty nice. E will move you to the end of a word. So that's sort of the distinction between those. And then you also have capital versions. So what's different about capital versions? The difference with capital versions is that they handle punctuation slightly differently. So the lowercase versions will stop on most punctuation. Right, so you can see that it stops on that hyphen when we go through. If we use N, same deal, it'll stop on the hyphen. The capital versions do not. So that considers basically any non-white space as a capital word. So when you see that all capital word in Vim, that usually indicates that it's the version that ignores the white space. So that's what's going on there. Let's see. Yep, so you just literally type that capital letter. So like if I want to move forward just one word, I can type W. But if I want to move that whole chunk of all the characters, then it's just Shift W for capital W. And this tends to be a lot faster than because otherwise I'd have to go grab the mouse and figure out where it is, figure out where to click, and then click where I want. Instead, I can just be I want to add something, at the end of this next word. That's great. I can just go here, move over one, insert, type what I want, exit, go back some words, whatnot. There's some other commands that are used for motions that you get used a lot. 0 takes you to the beginning of the line. That's nice. $sign takes you to the end. That's nice. Oh, this one is cool. So if you have some parentheses, you can use the %sign to sort of skip to the matching one. So it will take you back and forth between matching things. Another thing is if you have some versions of Vim have a compiled in version that works with tags as well. So if you have some HTML tags, you can actually skip between those. Okay, it looks like this version does not. But if you have a version that's compiled with that feature, you can also skip back and forth between tags, like in HTML or XML or JSX or whatever, which is pretty awesome. Okay, you have parentheses, forward and backwards parentheses, and forward and backwards brackets and braces. So the parentheses will move you one sentence. So in this case, that's always going to be a line. But if we have a couple of these on the same line, then that will move you sort of between each sentence. And then let's put some blank spaces here. The curlies will move you a whole paragraph. So usually that takes you to the next white space, but it usually does something intuitive. Again, once you sort of use these commands for a while, it starts to make more sense, like exactly what you expect each one to do. So that's pretty cool as well. And then the last thing, this I haven't used a whole lot, but it does come in handy in certain situations. If you want to move up to the next character, like say you want to move up to the next A, you can use the F key. And if you want to move to the space right before the next A, you can use T for till. So, you could do FA to move for like find an A is the way I think of it. So find A, and we just go to the next A, and we can do find A again. But let's say we just want to go like to the space before. You can also do till A, and it'll take you there, till A. Oh, we're still in front of the A's, that won't move us anymore. And if you want to go backwards, so if you're already past the A and you want to go back and find it, you can do that. Or if you want to, I've never used this, but if you want to like go back and like to before, or it's like after, but still, it sort of makes sense because it's the reverse, right? So you can use capital T to do like a backwards till. That one I don't use very often, but it is a thing if you want it. So these are your different nouns. That's how you can sort of move around. And okay, you might be like, that's great. But, maybe I'm really good with a mouse. I'm not that great with a mouse, mostly probably because I use Vim a lot. But maybe you're really good with a mouse and you're like, why would I switch to Vim? Like I can click pretty fast. All these things are interesting, but they don't really help me. Well, combining them with verbs is when you start to profit a little bit here. So you can see when you do nothing else except the noun, you just move. But you also have a series of other actions that you can do with these motions. So some of the most common three are really delete, change, and yank, which is like a copy. And delete is also like a cut. So when you delete something, it does save it into your clipboard, so you can paste it later, which is nice with P. But so let's sort of see what these look like. There's also replace, which is basically just used to replace one character. Technically, I think you might be able to use it with a motion, but actually, no, you can't really do that. So yeah, R is just for sort of replacing a character. Like say we want to, I don't know, replace this with an O, you can do RO, and then we'll replace that character and leave you in normal mode. So you don't even have to go to insert, because otherwise you'd have to like insert and then backspace and O, and that's just a lot of work for like a typo. Okay, so let's take a look at some of these commands. So the delete command in combination, if you press one of these commands, you'll see that, okay, apparently nothing happens. That's because it's waiting for you to give a motion. So it can delete different things. So let's say we just want to delete one character to the right. Then we can just use L, which is one character to the right. And you see it's gone. Undo that. What if we want to delete to the end of the line? So maybe we're like here and we decide, we'd really like to change this to something else. So we can do delete and then $sign to delete to the end of the line. That's nice as well. Change is very similar to delete. The only difference is it puts you in insert mode. So if we change to the end of the line, then now you notice we're in insert mode. So now we can immediately start typing things again. Whereas delete, if you just delete, you're still in normal mode. You can do all the normal mode things. So other than that, they're exactly the same. Both of them copy to your clipboard and cut things. But what's great about this is you can use it not with just those. So also like one I use all the time is change word. Right? So now if I just want to change one word, and maybe I realize, oh, my grammar is not correct. So let me go back here and add an N. So that's what's really powerful about using Vim. You can combine these things together and you can think, okay, maybe I want to delete to the end of this current word, or I want to, it's like that. Maybe I want to delete this whole capital word, right? So that is where you start to see a lot of gains. Once you get used to using all of the various combinations, you can do a lot of cool things. All right, so let's look at, we also have yank and so yank is like copy. So deleting things copies it. So like if we delete, let's delete this word, And if we want to put it right back, we can type P for paste. We can paste it lots of times if we want. So yeah, that's what paste does. If you want to just copy something without deleting it, so let's say we want to copy the whole line. You can do yank on the whole line, and then you can paste. And it doesn't really paste it exactly how we want, right? If we want it to be before, so if you want it to be before your cursor, it's best if we like yank one character. So let's yank this A so we can sort of see the difference. So if you want to paste, like let's say we want to paste after the N, we can just paste normally. If you want to paste before where you currently are, you can use capital P. So that's the difference between those. Vim has a lot of these commands that are like very similar, and they're like capital lowercase or like delete and change. Like they're very subtly different because change is basically just delete plus I. But if you use the correct one for the right situation, then you save yourself another few keystrokes and it's a little bit more efficient. So those are some of your verbs. Here's some other verbs. You may have seen me using U for undo. This is one of my favorite Vim features. Control Z is like you have to reach down for the control and then press Z. But if you're in normal mode, you can just use U to undo. And if you configure it, this is something else I love about Vim, you can have persistent and unlimited undo. So you can literally undo all the way back to the beginning of the existence of the file, which is honestly pretty awesome. So if I just hold this, you can like see undo all the way back to when the file started. And then you can do Control R to redo. And this can be, I use this all the time. Like, you know, maybe you're like, you had some code that was in a file like a few weeks ago or whatever, and you're like, I wonder what that was, or I want to like copy that and use that again. Well, you could use like Git or something and like check out the commit if you're using that. But if not, you can just hold undo and get all the way back. Sometimes it's fun just to undo a file just to kind of see how it was written too. So undo is great. We already looked at I, that inserts us, but there's some other variants of I. These are all sort of I variants. So capital I inserts you at the beginning of the line. So it's insert mode, but at the beginning. Okay, so that's nice. A is very subtly different. So the same thing with like lowercase and uppercase P. If you type I, it will insert you sort of before where your cursor is. So if I type a character, you see it comes before the G. A stands for append, and it inserts you right after that character. And so this is useful, especially at the end of the line, because like, what if you want to type something after the period? Well, if you do I, there's no way to do it because you just can't get beyond the end. But if you want to actually add something there, you can type A, and then it'll let you type there. And then O is opens up a new line. So I use this a lot. If you want to open up a new line below, then you can just type O and it'll drop you straight into insert mode. What's also great about this is, oh, we have to write a file name. All right, write the file. Okay, like if you're editing like a, let's say, I don't know, a Python file. It will do Vim knows how to do indentation correctly based on file type. So if you want to define like a sum function, and then if you do O, notice it drops us to the correct indentation to do all of our favorite things. There you go. Okay. So that's O. You can use capital O to insert above as well. So if you like, if you want to like, I don't know, insert another function up here. You can also just do a return as well. So if you just want to like go to a new line, Vim will automatically, it does. Yeah, if you do enter, it does do the right thing as well. It always just does the right thing. It can be fooled. It's like not infallible. I mean, it just follows an algorithm that's programmed in. But it generally does the right thing, especially if it's aware of your language. And if it's not, there are plugins that can make it aware. So yeah. All right. So yeah, these are just some other versions of I, basically, plus undo. Okay, here's some even more commands. I promise, I think this is the last one with commands. Yeah, okay. These are all, again, there are even more commands than this. Like I'm already like only showing you some of them, but over time you'll learn all of them, and it's super useful to know them all. Okay, most of these are just line-wise variants of things. So if you double up a verb, usually what it does is it does the same thing but applies it to the line. So DD will delete the entire current line. YY will copy the entire line. CC will change the entire line. And then capital Y also copies the entire line, this is kind of like an old backwards compatibility with VI. But if you want to remap it to work like capital D and capital C, which I do, you can do that. But usually the capital letter, except for Y, strangely, will do until the end of the current line. So if you want to see what that looks like, I use DD all the time. Because maybe you decide that you want to refactor something. And you're like, you know what? I would really, you just like to copy this whole line and get this whole thing. You can just do YY and then paste it down here. And just go ahead and add whatever code you want to add. That's great. Or maybe you just decide, I don't want this. I don't want any of this. I'm just going to delete everything. Just keep hitting D. Get rid of it all. So yeah, that's that. The until end of line is useful for variable declarations sometimes, I find. So like if you want to do like and then maybe you copy this, and you want to just change this to be something else, then you can sort of use that capital C. It's useful. Again, you can also use, if you notice, these are just shorter versions of like $, right? Or if you, that's all it is. So capital C is basically just $. If you look in the help, it'll actually tell you this. Although, yeah, okay. Vim has built-in help. So if you ever get confused, you can look up things in the help. So yeah, it'll tell you what it does. And it says like it's a synonym right there. That's how you know Vim is a language, right? And when the help actually tells you that things are synonyms. Okay. GG will take you to the beginning of the file, which I always think of good games. So that kind of confuses me sometimes, but you get used to it. And then capital G takes you to the end. Tilde will let you switch case of things. And it also shifts forward the line. So it's kind of interesting. This is useful when like converting camel case or something. So maybe you want to convert this to snake case. So we add our underscore. And then if you do the tilde, it will switch the case of a letter. It doesn't do anything if you try to use some punctuation. So, I mean, you can if you want. Also, if you just want to like switch the case of everything, you can just kind of hold it. So that's fun. We already went over R. You can use it to replace things. X, you can cut a letter. I don't really use this very often, but it is a thing you can do. So do all of that. The main thing I use it for is like typos. So say you do something like that, X will copy to the clipboard. So you can, if you have two characters you need to swap, the fastest way is XP. So if you think about what that does, you cut the character and then paste it right after. That's where I use it the most. But sometimes you just have a character, you type two of something by mistake, you can just X. Very nice. Again, all of these things are very situational. They all come in handy sometimes, but if you sort of just remember just the basic things, so remember the motions, if you get the motions down, and really you don't need to know these ones as much. If you really just get these three, the different word ones are definitely the most interesting. And we'll see in combination with counts that you can do a lot with just these sort of word ones. So if you know the words and you know the verbs, then you can get pretty far. That's what I would focus on learning if you're new to Vim. So yeah, okay. So we looked at some different commands. Adjectives. The main adjective is a count. A count is just a number, and you can use it to modify how many words. Well, you can use it to modify basically anything. It's an adjective. So like in this example, if you instead of CW for change one word, you can do C2W for change two words. You can also do 2CW. It does the same thing, like just whatever way types more naturally for you. Like I know for 2DD, if I want to delete two lines, I do 2DD rather than D2D, which just feels strange to me. But both of them work. You can think of it either way, either changing two words or twice deleting a line. It makes sense conceptually both ways. So you can do paste. if you want to like jump ahead by 2 A's, right? And like you can do very specific things. And that's what's awesome about Vim. So like if you want to, instead of jumping ahead 1 A, you want to jump ahead 2 A's, you can do 2FA, which is kind of interesting. So yeah, that's what with that and letters you can get really far. And then dot character is awesome. I use dot all the time. Dot just redoes whatever you just did, which is kind of vague, but that's what makes it super awesome. So if I want to delete a bunch of lines, instead of spamming D so many times, I can just do it once, and then I can just use dot for the rest, which is great. Or maybe I want to, this is useful for like renaming a variable on a, that only has a few versions. And so it's not worth like a search and replace or whatever. Maybe I want to call this, I don't know, first. Well, that change operation is now stored in D. So if I go to something else I want to change and hit dot, it will do the exact same change operation. So that is super awesome also. It just makes things even shorter. So it makes it easy to change a, you know, make the same transformation multiple times. So that is super awesome. Vim has searching, so you can use / to search forwards, question mark, which is, you might be like, why is it question mark? Or maybe you're wondering why it's /, but why is it question mark? That's just capital / on your typical keyboard. And so Vim has a pattern where the capital often does like the reverse of what the lowercase does. And so this sort of continues with that pattern. So that lets you search backwards, and then lowercase n lets you like search that again, and uppercase n lets you go backwards. So what does that actually look like in practice? Say I want to search for function definitions, I can type def, and so you see it jumps me to one. I can use n to jump forward, uppercase n to jump back. Let's say I want to search for defs backwards from where I am. I can do that as well, and now n will move me backwards, and this reverses the behavior back to forwards. It makes sense if you think about it. So yeah, searching, that's nice. Indentation. So Vim will fix your indentation, and these are commands. So you can apply them. Usually you just do it for one line, but you can apply it over a motion as well. So which is powerful. So like let's say we just want to indent this some more. We can using something twice, right? Just like using DD, we'll delete, or YY, we'll yank something. You can use the sort of less than to move indentation back, the greater than to move it forward, and then equals will try to return to like that correct indentation, whatever Vim thinks the right indentation should be. And you can do this over a range as well. So if I want to, let's say I want to take this whole function and indent it forward. So how might I do that? I could just do this and then do dot, and maybe that's good enough. But something else you can do that's a little more efficient is you can do this, right? So indent, and then remember our forward paragraph, and that will apply the indent over the whole forward paragraph. And that's only 2 characters. That's very, very cheap compared to doing something like this, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that, but being more efficient is always better. The more things you can be efficient on, the less time you'll spend editing text, and the more time you can spend actually like thinking about the problems you face. That's one thing that's sort of like the motivation to use Vim, right? Text editing is something you want to avoid. That's the boring part. Unless you just really like to type, programming is about thinking about the problems you face. And then once you have the solution in your head, implementing that, moving it from your head onto the file. And Vim is just designed to be the most efficient way to do that. And so the point of all this is so that you spend as little time as possible actually editing things, and you can spend more time like doing programming and thinking about the problems. Okay, so that was indentation. Registers. So registers are just clipboards. Vim has more than 3 dozen. Basically every single character is a clipboard. So have you ever been in a case where you're like, I want to copy one thing, but I also want to copy this other thing, but like it overwrote your copy? Well, never fear. With Vim, you can use every single letter. That's at least 26 clipboards. So if you want to copy 27 things, I guess you're out of luck. But most likely you don't want to do that. So 26 has always been more than enough for me. So the way this works is every register is addressed with this, with the double quote. So you type double quote, and then you type the register and you can perform operations on it. So I'll hit escape to get out of it. Let's say I want to copy the word sum into my A register. So I specify the A register, and then I'm going to yank. And then what do I want to yank? I just want to yank a word. And now you can actually type reg to see what's in your registers. So you can see right here, A now has sum. There's also some other automatic registers that have some things. The most notable are this %sign register, always has the name of the file. So that's useful if you want to paste the name of the file. So you can also paste out of these registers. So if you do, like, let's say we want to paste the file name. So we reference that and then we type paste. And that will always give you the current file name. And that comes up sometimes. There's also number registers. So number registers have things that you deleted before. So remember, we deleted all this stuff. So it's hanging out in all the various number registers. Those are all deletions we did in the past. And then there's also the default register. Like if you don't specify one, then it will give you this quote register. It's like the same character twice, right? Your double quote. And that has just whatever you last deleted or yanked or whatever. So yeah, those are registers. There's a whole bunch of them. But yeah, I guess the most important other one that you would use is this plus register. That is the system clipboard. So if I copy some stuff from the system, the default Vim that won't overwrite the main Vim register. So this still has whatever garbage it had in before, sum, that we just yanked. If I want to actually get at that, you can do the plus register. And you can remap this behavior. Oh, that should have done something. Oh, you know what the problem is? This is in a virtual machine. So that's why it didn't work. If I go to here and copy this, then we can, we should have gotten, maybe this one may not be compiled with that supported in to reduce the size. That's another possibility. Yeah, I don't think it has that compiled in. But usually that will work. Okay, macros. This is kind of a niche tool. It comes up sometimes. It's extremely powerful. Anytime you want to do a transformation across like multiple lines of text and you want to do the same thing over and over. I find this comes up like in HTML a lot. So for a workshop I did a while ago, I ended up having to write an HTML file. And I had this terrible implementation because I didn't want to involve JavaScript. I wanted to keep it simple. So I wanted to have like an unordered list. Right. And I wanted to have a bunch of list items in it that were like all the different numbers. And I wanted to do like 100 list items. So basically what I wanted to have was something like this. And then I had the same thing for 2. The same thing for 3, same thing for 4, right? But this is going to take a very long time to type out. So how can I do this more quickly? Well, what you can do with a macro is record a set of actions that you take and then repeat it. So one thing that you have to use for this is like in Vim, you can increment a number with Control A. So that makes it go up, and then I think it's Control X makes it go down. And it's actually very smart too. Like you have, like you might think, oh, is this going to make it 400? But no, it's smart enough to figure that out. And it can do negatives as well, I believe. Yeah, so it's very smart. That's nice. So that's how we can increment our number. So what we can kind of think about, if we want to make this go up to 100, how can we sort of solve that problem? And so what we would do is like, what I would do is I'd yank the line, right? So YY, and then paste it. And then you want to advance yourself to the number. And usually a good thing to do in macros is like always reset yourself to the beginning of the line so you know where you are. And I'm just going to press W until I get to where I want to be. And then Control A to increase the number. And now we're ready to do this again, right? So that's the steps we're going to do. So to actually do this, to actually record, you use the Q. So Q starts recording. And then after Q, you put a register name. So you can use any letter. You can have up to 26 macros, but also those are your clipboards. So, and they are shared. Like you can paste the content of a macro if you want. Kind of interesting. But QQ is basically usually the one you use because it's just the same button twice. So you record into your Q macro. And then eventually in normal mode, while you're recording, hit Q, and that'll stop the recording. And then you can use @Q to run the macro. And if you want to run it many times, you can do @@. You can also do this with a count. So we'll see how we can use that to get to 100 very easily. So let's actually start recording this macro. So let's go back to the beginning and do QQ. So you can now see down here, recording @Q. So what are we going to do? We're going to yank the line. We're going to paste it. We're going to move forward until we get to the number, increment it once. And then is there anything else we need to do? I think we're good. So we can stop that. And if we want to try it, let's do @Q. And look, it did it very fast. Let's say we want 100 of these. We can do 100 @Q. And there we go, much quicker than typing it out manually. So yeah, macros are great for stuff like that. Okay, interacting with the terminal. So if you don't want to close Vim to use the terminal, that's okay. You can run terminal commands by just using the exclamation point. I don't actually use this that often, but maybe you just want to know, like you just want to run ls and see what other files are in your current directory. You can do that. And it will basically, different implementations do it different ways. So this one like exits, but some of them will do it inline to sort of show you what the output of the command is. But that's nice. That's pretty cool. You can run different commands. One thing that's sort of unique about this is that you can use that %sign. So if you remember, %sign in many contexts in Vim represents the current file name. So if you want to remove the current file, you can use % in one of these like exclamation point commands, and that will expand to whatever your current file is. So if we want to remove the file we're in, we can do that. And now it's going to say, okay, this file's gone. It doesn't actually remove our content because this is still stored in memory. But if we close this, like you see, it says no write/change. If we close this, it's completely gone. There's no way to get it back now. So you can do things like that. It's good for copying, like maybe you want to copy a file. So if we want to copy this somewhere, we can copy this to file2.txt. And then you can see file2.txt is now there, which is nice. What's cool about this, you can do things like if you have a Python file and you just want to run it real quick, you can run the current file through Python or Node or whatever you want to do. That's nice. The R command, this is one of those command line commands where you use the colon. There's a whole bunch of them, but this is one of the most useful I find. I use this all the time. So sometimes I want to paste the date, usually for assignments, I want to paste the current date right before I submit my assignment. And so what the R command does is it will take let's open up test.py. So let's say I have like a comment here. I'm going to say, okay, this is Rob's code. And I want to say like the day and time this was made. What the R command does is it will take the contents of whatever you call next and paste it into the buffer. So like, let's say we just want to list all the files into the buffer. Like we can do that. Okay, maybe that's helpful. But usually what I use is date. So you can kind of get the date from your basic date utility on your operating system. And that's very nice. It's a quick way to get that otherwise you'd have to like copy it or something. Again, just a convenient thing. You can do much more powerful things with this, but I don't really use it that often. I usually just close Vim because it's very fast to start up. So marks. If you want to set this is sort of like, it's basically just leaving a mark somewhere in a file. And what's really cool about this is it can work cross-file as well, which I'll show you. But let's say you want to, if you have a really big file, so like let's see, let's yank to the bottom of the file, and then let's just paste that a few times. So we feel like we have a big file. Okay, so we have this huge file. And what we want to do is we want to navigate around it quickly. Well, what you can do is set a mark. So maybe I know I'm going to want to come back here soon. So I can do M and then a letter, and that will set a mark there. So now that's marked as A. And so, I'm going about my business, typing things. If I want to get back to A, you can use single quote, and that'll take it right back. If you set your mark so single quote always takes you to the line. But like, let's say I want it to be in this specific part of the line. So I mark this as A. Single quote will take you to the line. If you use tilde quote or tilde with the the mark, it will take you to the exact spot, which is nice sometimes. And so that's a way to jump around if you have like a huge file and you have trouble with that. The other thing is if you use an uppercase letter, then that's global across all files. So this is really cool. You can actually switch files with this. So let's mark this with capital A. And then let's go edit something else, file. And if we jump back to capital A, it will actually open up that file and take us back to that exact spot. So if you're working between two files, usually I just open a split. So you can open a split pretty easily. But if you want to open up a file and like hop between two, you can use marks. That's one way to do it. So yeah, marks, pretty cool. All right, control commands. There's several of these. We already saw a few, but some of the ones I use a lot are Control E and Control Y. That will move up and down without moving your cursor. And then Control N and Control P are like keyword completions. Let me show you those real quick. So, okay, I just used it there. So like, let's say you're here and you want to scroll to show more space below, but you don't want to actually move your cursor, right? J moves you down. But if you just want to like scroll up the page and not move your cursor, you can do that with E. Of course, once you get to the top, it will undo that. And then you can do Control Y to do the opposite thing. So that's pretty great. And then any file, you can use this kind of completion. So Vim has language aware completion if you have like plugins for that. But just for anything, you can always use Control N to try to match other things in the file. So if you just want to like, and this, like I find this is very useful, especially for languages that don't have like a plugin or don't have good completion support. It's very useful. You can always use Control N to just return, trying to find like a collision, but I don't think there's any. Yeah, there's not really any collisions. But if you had a bunch, let's add some more words that start with S. Let's see, sandwich. I'm hungry. Salad. Okay. So then later, if we come down here and we do S, you get a little menu where you can complete the different things. And you can go up and down with Control P and Control N. So yeah, there's lots more control commands, but those are the ones I use the most. And we're almost at the end here. If you forget what a key does, don't worry. I forget what keys do all the time. Like, don't think that you have to memorize this whole presentation to have any hope of using Vim well. It will take some time. What you can do, :H. But if you forget what the H key does, well, yeah, then I guess you can't get help. But if all you remember is :H to get help, then you're in a really good spot because you can look up basically any command. So :H, and let's say we forget what %sign does in normal mode. We look that up and it tells us, oh, find the next item in this line after under the cursor and jump to its match. And so you can see it matches. I guess it'll match if defs and C style comments too. So yeah, okay, that's pretty cool. Or maybe you forget what Control N does. So you just put C-N. Oh, I guess there's no help for that. So maybe it doesn't always work, but it seems to work for most things. Like we want to know what the search does. Okay, it'll tell us the search. And Vim Tutor. So if you actually want to learn Vim, the way I recommend, Vim actually comes with a built-in like tutorial. You can just type Vim Tutor and it will open up a Vim file and it will tell you what to do on the screen. So it says to move the cursor, use the H, J, K, L keys. So you can scroll through and it will show you, it'll kind of give you some exercises. So like first thing it tells you is how to exit Vim. Very nice. It'll tell you how to delete things and sort of just walk you through. And this is not a super long file. It probably takes you around half an hour to finish, depending on how fast you are. Again, most of this is just like reading through. So if you already know, but basically this is how I recommend you learn Vim. Yeah, that's it. I think it's only, let's see how many lines this is. Yeah, it's less than 1,000 lines. So if you want to learn Vim, I recommend just running through Vim Tutor several times, maybe do it for a week or two until you feel comfortable with those commands. And that's not all the commands I show you. That just shows you sort of the base subset that you want to know for sure. But over time, you'll pick up other commands and incorporate them into your workflow. Again, at the start, I would say if you just get used to like W, B, and E and your basic sort of word moving commands, and then your deletions and pastes and copies, that'll get you pretty far. And then Vim is extremely configurable. So if there's any of these things in this behavior that you don't like for some reason, then you can change it. Like if you don't like how the Y works, like capital Y, and you want to change it to do like the same thing as Y $, you can, there's a whole syntax for doing that. I'm not going to go over that today, but that is something you can do. There's lots and lots of plugins for Vim, all kinds of things. And there's of course more normal mode commands. So that is the end of my slides. I did want to do sort of a demo where I would do some actual editing. We did sort of show some basic things, but just so you can sort of see what like my workflow would look like using Vim to actually work on a project. So, but if there's any questions, I'll take those now while I get this set up properly. Let's see. Yeah, so I actually took the code of this Nighthacks, beautiful Nighthacks site, and I wanted to incorporate some elements of Vim. There's a little bit of Vim here and there, but it could use some more Vim. So I have this set up. Let me get a new terminal. Dun, dun, dun.
What's a Vim command to open up a new terminal?
So actually, I mean, so I guess you can't open up a new terminal. You just open a new thing. But if you want to, I mean, there is the exclamation point. So remember that if you want to, it's : exclamation point, and then you can run commands there. So there's that. One project, NeoVim, has a built-in terminal that you can open, but I don't think this version does. I think I also installed the newer version with like some plugins that I usually use. So there's something called NeoVim, which is like a reimplementation of Vim that like updates the code base, because Vim is a like several decades old C code base. And I'm sure you all have written some C, and you know that there's likely to be some problems with an extremely old C code base. So they completely rewrote it, and that project is called NeoVim. That is available for all operating systems. You can install that. It's a little heavier. I think it's like 6 or 7 megabytes. But again, not particularly heavy. And it has some cool plugins as well. So let's see. I don't think I'm in the right folder here. But yeah. So this is the club site. I just straight up stole this from the dev team. Just so we can sort of show, again, the edits aren't too important, just to sort of show how you can use Vim in your workflow. So usually so when I use Vim, I'm usually like navigating with the terminal. So it doesn't come with like VS Code does, with like a sidebar where you can, click the different files and get the things you want. That doesn't really ship with it. So usually I just use kind of CD and LS to like move around and basically use that as my file manager. And, it's good enough for me. So why don't we start with these upcoming events? There's a lot of events here that aren't Vim events. So I think what we should do is change some of that. So let's go to event.js and see what we can do. I did install, so my nvim does have some plugins installed for syntax highlighting for JSX. But yeah, I think this one also has the tab. Yeah, this one has the tag jumping thing, so you can jump with %sign. So that's pretty cool. So yeah, this is just a React code base. So let's see, we don't want to have this silly whatever the actual event title is. Why don't we just put, so we can actually, if we want to delete this whole thing, you can do delete and delete along the matching brace, and I'll just go ahead and delete the whole chunk. That's nice. Or something, the even best way to do this is probably, there's newer versions of Vim or NeoVim have something called an inner object. So if we're inside this tag here, you can actually do, like if you're inside of a word and you hit change word, it will only change past the line. But if you want to change while you're inside of a word, you can do change in word, and that will take the whole word. Well, it also works for tags. So you can change in, here, let me escape. So we make sure it's to an even set, and then we can change in tag, and that will remove everything inside the tag and let you type. So yeah, that's pretty cool. So let's just change all of these to more Vim and save that. Let's see, did that work? I don't actually know if this is reloading. Oh, it did reload. Okay, awesome. Yes. And then description, let's see, because right now I think the descriptions still have the actual descriptions. Yeah. So let's change that as well. So searching is a great way to move around because hitting J a million times or K a million times is like kind of slow. You can hold it, and if you have key repeats, that will move you as well. But searching is a very fast way to just sort of jump around to wherever you need to go. And that's where question mark is useful as well. Like if I want to get back to set expanded. Okay, so let's go back to our description. Yeah, in fact, I don't think I want this either. I just want to put, let's just put, save that, and hopefully we'll get some updates of our description here in a minute. It does take a second to reload it. Okay, there we go. We have some nice events. I also have an SVG. So let's say we want to change all of these pictures to be Vim. Well, we can change, I think that component is the teams component. So let's go to teams.js. Skipping by paragraph through code will kind of do like a white space sort of thing. So it's usually quicker than if you don't know exactly what you're looking for, you just want to kind of skip through. Oh, there we go. I think I want image. Yep. And then our image, I'm just going to set it to require an SVG that I added to this project. And hopefully that will work. Let's see. Give it a minute to load. So yeah, once you, and notice like I don't necessarily need the mouse for any of these things. So it's pretty nice in that you don't have to move your hands off the keyboard. And also you don't have to like remember, I know like I tried to switch to VS Code a couple of months ago. And like in order to do a lot of things, you have to remember like Control, Shift, and some number. And Vim might seem intimidating to remember, but a lot of the commands are great mnemonics. You know, delete is D, and sort of like even like things like 0, right? 0 being like the beginning of the line, 0 is the lowest number. It sort of makes sense. If you know regular expressions, $sign's the end of the line, right? So that kind of comes from that. I don't know which one invented that or if they come from something else, but all of the commands sort of make a conceptual sense. So even though I have a terrible memory, it's hard for me to remember things. Between muscle memory and then just the general intuitiveness of stuff makes a lot of sense. Okay, and then the last thing I want to change is this about us. So let's see if we can do that. I guess that would be an about us.js. Just try that. Oh, no, it looks like it's in the markdown. About us, okay. Again, Vim has built-in support for a lot of file types, like markdown, text. I think Python is built in. Some of them you have to get plugins for, of course, like JSX. I don't think I had to get a plugin for that. But a lot of languages are going to be already supported by Vim. Okay, so this is nice. Maybe I want to, well, this is also just one gigantic line. So it'd be good if we could break this up. So GQ is actually, G has a lot of, I know I didn't talk about G. G has a lot of different commands underneath it. So like basically, if you think about every key on the Vim keyboard does something, well, there still weren't enough keys. So they hide a lot of functionality under G. So like you can have, if you want to uppercase something, G and capital U, and then emotion, well, uppercase that. I was in a bad spot, but G uppercase and a word, you can uppercase that whole thing. Or if you want to lowercase it, G lowercase U, and then your motion, you can do that. Like maybe I want to uppercase all this stuff. So G uppercase for paragraph. Oh, didn't type the right thing. G uppercase, back paragraph. There you go. And you can capitalize everything. Yeah, that's Vim. So that's just sort of how, hopefully that was helpful with the screen overlay. Definitely leave me some feedback in the feedback form about that, if you thought that was useful or not. I tried to find one for macOS, but it just didn't have one. So I ended up working in my Linux virtual machine, which is fine. But yeah, I'm going to stop sharing. Are there any questions that I can take?
Have you heard of Vimium?
Vimium. Is that, it's the browser extension to add it to Chrome, right?
Yeah.
Yes, I used one of those for Firefox for a while. But I found that a lot of web content is just not built to be consumed like that.
Really?
It had some, it also, the performance was not good. So I haven't used it. I haven't used any plugins like that for a while, but I did at one point. At one point I didn't have a mouse because my brother actually took mine. His mouse ran. And so I installed it like that day because I was like, I got to get by somehow without a mouse for a few days. And so that was an interesting experience, but yeah, I don't use things like that regularly.
Yeah, I use it. I started, I think, I don't know, maybe 2-3 months ago, and I don't use it for everything, but it has a lot of nice features. Like you just press, I think, F, and everything just becomes hyperlinked. And then like
Yep,
you have
the hinge.
your
Yeah, no, it
and
was
then like
definitely, it was
K to
nice how I
go
used it.
down.
It was mainly the performance, and then a lot of things are just meant to be done with a mouse on the web. And other people's computers didn't have that installed either. So that's something I find is a problem a lot. Like I'm typing on Word or Google Docs or something, and I'll just like have random like WQs when I'm done, or like escape usually is pretty benign, but a bunch of, you'll see like a bunch of J's as I'm like trying to go down and like it just doesn't work, and it makes me sad. Notion does this to me too, but it's most of the time I can write things in Vim, so it's okay. Like this presentation written in Vim, like it's all good.
Pretty cool.
All right. With that, I'm going to go ahead and stop recording that. I don't think we have any more questions. Thank you all for coming out.